Hello, welcome to Actual Play, Hello Cantrefs. We're starting a brand new series tonight. So if you're here right now, you're at the very beginning of it. And we're going to do a three-part series. So come back every other Saturday and join us for more of this amazing game that you're about to experience the first session of. I'm Sean Nittner. I use he, him pronouns. You can find me everywhere at Sean Nittner. I'm very excited to be playing Moss, who does not use pronouns, but you can use they, them if it's convenient in conversation. Moss is 12, but very close to 13. And Moss thinks that's a very auspicious, an auspicious day. Everything is Moss is very bookish and has lots of theories about what things mean, but often sort of speaks in eeps and moops, and when speaking a lot, Moss is generally speaking to Moss's self. Anyway, I'm super excited to play and find out what this childhood coming of age story looks like for them. And as usual, Luke, you're in the wrong place. Poop. There we go. As usual, all proceeds from the channel are split between Black Lives Matter and the Trans Legal Defense and Education Fund. So if you give us monies, that's where it goes. You could give those places monies directly too. That would probably be smarter, so Twitch wouldn't take its cut. But if you give us money, that's where it goes. We appreciate it. Yeah, that's me. How about you, Gian?
Hello, my name is Gian. If you saw me visibly emoting silently for some reasons, because I forgot that my screen name is my cash look screen name. But my name is Gian Shim, not Leonardo DiCaprio.
I can fix it for you.
Thank you so much. I think. Anyway, I will be playing. The oldest of our group, actually, Tang, who is a 16-year-old. The playbook is the Cloak playbook. So she is what we might think of as very ranger-ish. She tracks, she hunts, she knows plants, and she thinks she knows a lot more about the world in an adult way than she has actual life experience to back up. So I'm really looking forward to playing that.
Yeah. How about you, Jamie?
Hi, I'm Jamie. I use they, he pronouns, and I'm playing Whisper today. Whisper uses they, he pronouns too, and Whisper is the door. And Whisper looks like he's 12 years old, but he doesn't act like he's 12 years old or talks like he's 12 years old. So I think truly Whisper's coming of age story is Whisper allowing themselves to be a child, right? Aside from disconnect themselves from the power of the doors and allow themselves to be a child of the village. But yeah, so Whisper belongs to no one and he belongs to everyone at the same time. Whisper lost most of his family under mysterious circumstances some time back.
Rad. And Luke, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm very excited to dig into already so many juicy details have been hinted at. Hello, everyone. I'm Luke. My pronouns are they, them. I will be your chronicler today for this episode and episodes to come of Tales from the Low Cantrefs. Tales from the Low Cantrefs is a half fantasy coming-of-age game inspired by books like Sabriel and the rest of the Old Kingdom Chronicles by Garth Nix, The Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander. It's a game filled with petty village politics, childhood superstitions, adults who just don't understand, strange magics, wild and ruined landscapes, monsters out of old folktales, and the terrible responsibility of growing up. I wish our characters well. So, already off stream, we have made our characters, and we have made our village, the village of Sindel, which we will introduce you to momentarily. The next step, the final step of kind of setup for the game, is a step that is called Weaving the Tapestry. And this is the step where we kind of start tying all of these separate and disparate threads together. We figure out history that ties our characters together. We figure out their personal histories. We figure out where they are and what that place maybe is like a bit in detail. And so we're going to do that on stream for the next kind of like hour and a half or so. and let you watch us kind of get these characters all set up to go on their exciting adolescent journey together. And then probably we're going to take a break. And then after the break, we're going to plunge into play. So,
P&D-istic.
I think...
Probably note that before session we had our safety talk internally.
Yes,
we've got some things that we are not going to include in the game, some things we're actively excited about, some things that we're going to elide over, and we also are going to use a variety of tools, including Open Door and any other kind of game interruption like cut and break that we need. But primarily, we, as people who know each other and care about one another, are just going to listen to what each other's needs are, and make sure we're not doing anything that makes the game unfun for any of us. So,
yeah,
that was the combo we had.
Yeah, and this kind of weaving the tapestry step is a great step for us to do that, because it lets us kind of calibrate some stuff and people's comfort levels in advance before I'm in the middle of play and I'm like, hey, tell me about your family. And you're like, they were horribly murdered. And someone's like, whoa, slow down. Though, of course, in play, that is also okay. So I think let's start off with the absolute basics, which is there are some fundamental questions I have about these characters and their home lives and how they are supported materially in the world. Sean, let's start with you.
Yep.
Where does Moss live and who with?
Moss lives with family, pretty big family including children and an extended family. So there's cousins, there's aunts, uncles. I mean, I'd say probably 25 or so people living in a not quite a commune, but a main house and a couple outhouses. When someone first gets married, they have a year that they get to have the back house to themselves, and then you kind of just gradually get integrated back into the main lodge. So Moss is kind of used to sleeping with siblings all just over them, and also it makes it really easy for Moss to slip away because there's lots and lots of kids. It's a multi-generational house. And Moss is well loved, but also a weirdo, and so very easy to ignore because it's kind of just more convenient if you don't pay too much attention to what Moss is doing.
And who is Moss closest to in that family? Can you give me someone in your kind of age bracket and then an adult?
Do they have to be alive? So Moss was closest. Moss was closest to Moss's grandma, who died shortly after giving Moss this very amazing journal that they keep that's precious. And they're really close to grandma and spend a lot of time with her. She died a while ago, and I don't think I don't know, a year and a day ago or something like that. Nothing auspicious. And since then, Moss has never really found an adult that feels that Moss feels that really gets them. A lot of people tolerate Moss just fine. They're not cruel, but they don't really get them. But in terms of their own age bracket, I think there is I think Moss has a older sister named Jess, and I think Jess very much makes sure Jess is the one to make sure that Moss is button their pants and before they go outside, and made sure to bring their lunch before they go out to work in the day, and generally kind of make sure that that Moss can kind of get away with being an idiot. Not an idiot, can get away with being not really thoughtful about material needs and material responsibilities because Jess will kind of cover.
Jess has already taken care of it, right?
Yeah, or just knows to remind them, did you do this? Oh, and there's a very common thing of they're heading out the door. Did you remember your knapsack? Oh, did you put food in it? Yeah. Did you, and because otherwise Moss comes out and's got the knapsack and it's are those all just books in there? Right. So
Is
And
is Jess hireable as a personal assistant? Because I really relate to Mom a lot right now, and I just want to ask if that's like a service that she has to pay for. Yeah, Jess sounds great too. I'm really into this dynamic.
Yeah. Interesting too, because actually my follow-up question is Jess, like, you say Jess is an older sister, is Jess like only a couple of years older? Is Jess like Tang's age?
I
Is
think
Jess like
Jess has got to be Tang's age, because
right.
that
Oh.
gives Tang and Moss a connection that they might not have otherwise.
Yeah, I wonder if Jess and Tang are friends. Actually,
I think
we can
so.
get more into that later, but I think that also sets up some cool stuff.
that thought also crossed my mind.
Yeah. I think Jess is just a little younger than Tang. I think Jess is 15 if Tang is 16.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, like, still within the context of the community, they're the same age. But within the context of Tang being like, I'm an adult and I know better, I think Jess buys into that. Believes that, because Tang's a whole year, probably not even a whole year, probably a little, like 8 months or 6 months.
7 whole months.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just gonna spoil alert out of character right now that whole like I know better is probably not true most times.
Oh, yeah. I just want to give you lots of opportunity for people to believe that. So give you lots of room. Hang yourself with.
Perfect.
So Jess is not going to be like, no, you don't, Tang. And Jess doesn't treat Tang. I don't want to narrate for you, Jim, but I don't think Jess treats Tang like Jess treats Moss, right? Like it's a different dynamic altogether.
Cool. I think you've already answered another one of the like baseline questions. Who do you go to with your problems? Well, you used to go to grandma, and now I guess you're shit out of luck.
Yeah, if there are small problems that Jess can help with, I go to her. If they're big problems, I hide them in little crooks and crevices.
Oh.
Like
buddy.
Of sometimes crooks of my heart, sometimes actually physical crooks and crevices. But yeah, big problems just I don't have an outlet for.
Yeah. And you've got this big house. This like a really big house. It sounds like it's probably like the biggest house in the village. But we can come to that.
That sounds good.
Where do you go to be alone? I don't want to have to deal with people.
Yeah, which I do all the freaking time. I definitely think I added the detail in the village because I liked it. So there's a mountain. Why don't I remember my own mountain's name? My own mountain, Bealebeek's Ridge. Bealebeek's Ridge we're in the shadow of, and there's a little goat path that goes up to a landing, and this landing has two very cool aspects to it. One is that you can see the whole village, and you can totally tell what like everybody's doing, so you can sit up there and gossip about people. The other is that you can jump off it into a pool below, and that is often where Moss will be, in part because Moss can see if people are coming up the path, and if someone's coming up that they don't want to deal with, they can just leap off into the pool. And Moss coming home completely drenched is like not an uncommon thing.
Slightly dramatic way to avoid a conversation, but that's fine. All right, thank you, Sean. Gian, talk to me. Where does Tang live, and who with?
I think we talked a little bit about our village incorporating some meadows that are like at the start of a forest, if I remember correctly, because there's plenty of game. We're never short for animals. I think there are streams and creeks that reliably have fish most springs and summers, and I think that I live close to those border areas. I think I have 3 parents, and that I get along. I'm gonna bust the curve here and stray from tradition and say that I love my parents, and my parents love me, and we get along really well, and we have a great, healthy relationship.
Yeah.
I want to explore playing a game where my home life in a role-playing game as a character is really lovely, actually, because it just seems nice. And I think that I have 2 fathers and a mother. I think I had a sibling who died pretty young, and we can just put the gloss there as it is now, and go more into detail with that later. But at this point, I'm effectively an only child. After my younger sibling died, my parents basically stopped stopped trying to have kids. And so I am effectively the older sibling for a lot of other families' children. I think I run around a lot. I think I tend to babysit a lot. Obviously not babysit, because this is a very communal, non-nuclear, non-fragmented,
Yeah.
and isolated setup. But essentially, like, as a near adult, I fit into caretaking roles a lot. And so I tend to know a lot of villagers, and a lot of villagers know me, which means they know my business. And like, I really prize my privacy as a result.
Everybody
Speaking-
knows everyone's business.
Speaking of your privacy, where does Tang go to be alone?
There is. It is a short hike, but a really steep, frankly precarious hike up to a beautiful portion of the creek, which is an outright waterfall. There is a stone outcropping with abundant shade-loving wildflowers. There are these flowers that you can't see. Even in the meadow, they don't really grow except for very short windows in the spring. But here, they're there year-round. You get ferns that you don't see elsewhere. We should have looked up more endemic species in the UK and like the different British Isles and stuff. I looked up some of the fauna and I got so mad about the slow worm that I stopped. But I'll do more research later. But I do know that there are, at least in the North American continent, lots of flowers that will thrive and lots of plants that will thrive in very specific conditions. And this waterfall and the pool that it leads into is like a non-desert oasis of that. It's just teeming with life. And there is a slightly supernatural feeling to just how colorful it is and how abundant it is. And
like a little microclimate.
Yeah. And
the
hike is so miserable to get there that I am one of very few, maybe the only person who goes there regularly. I think some people like to go as a special occasion once or twice a year, but no one goes all the time except me.
Yeah. And do you picture that hike being kind of like up into like the foothills of the ridge?
Yeah.
Cool.
Like the goats go up sometimes. I think it's the kind of path where if you saw a goat on it, you'd be like, oh my God, how do they do that? You know how goats have such good balance?
A magic goat.
Yeah. And I do think people get injured sometimes trying to go up and like losing their footing. And so there is a slight risk like associated with it as well.
All right, cool. And if I assumed that the people that Tang goes to with his problems are her loving, supportive parents, would I be pretty much on the money?
Yes, except Tang is now entering this phase where I should have said earlier, Tang uses both she, her, and he, him pronouns. And I think their gender is fluid in the sense that whoever is with Tang, whatever they feel most comfortable and good about, that like Tang doesn't care, but tends to switch between the two. I think that he is entering this phase where he just thinks that because of the culture of the village of like asking for help is a child's thing to do. And I think there is a certain like bent toward hyper resilience and hyper self-reliance, even within a communal setting. It's not isolated, but it is like, did you try to solve this problem yourself first? Which is like legit. And when Tang, I think like in as much as he thinks consciously about adulthood, I think he's like, I really can't talk to other people about stuff. He's convinced himself that talking to his parents is a thing that he's leaving behind.
She doesn't have problems now because she's an adult.
Of course, yeah.
Right, I understand.
Exactly. Yeah.
Say no more.
Yeah, and adults don't have problems. Right?
Exactly. That's how things work around here in the village of Sindel.
I mean, from a perspective of a child, figuring out, experimenting with adulthood, I think that's a common misconception. It's a very fair one.
I just need you to know that in the section of my notes where I have this question, I've just written Moss doesn't, Tang doesn't. So, real emotionally healthy group we've got going here. Everyone.
Yeah. I feel
stuff.
like I feel like Moss is not under the same pressure with Tang of can't feel can't let themselves uh release, just doesn't kind of, I don't know, if you watch those like old Adam West Batman movies where like Batman TV shows where Batman's like running around with a bomb and he's like, where do I go, where do I go? I feel like that's Moss with like big emotions, like what do I do,
With their
what do I
feelings,
do?
yeah.
Like I got this giant bomb, I don't know where to put it. And
Who knows how to discharge a bomb?
right. And so it's just like this kind of it's kind of this like cluelessness rather than, I think, this sense of like, I should have been able to figure this out myself. I think there's different, I think they both say don't, but it's for different reasons.
Yeah, it's for very different reasons. And I'm excited for Jamie to also give me the same answer for another new reason.
Oh no.
Oh.
No, I do talk about my problems. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, Jamie. Let us begin. Where do you live? Who with? Who you kind of like hinted at a lot of your family are deceased. Kind of who do you have left who you kind of call family?
Yeah, I think instead there's a tradition in the village where when there's an orphan, then the orphan belongs to everyone, right?
Yeah,
so
gotcha.
so Whisper will just show up at someone's door, just like open it, and then people are like, oh yeah, so now we have a new child to take care of.
Right. So you live in everyone's house and no one's house.
Yeah.
All at once.
Yeah, exactly. I just, like a cat, right? The village cat, like that's kind of, I just get up and people will take care of me. I'll just show up.
Yeah,
and,
let me just write that down, like a stray cat. Yep,
yes,
great. Okay.
Yes. But I think this is like, I don't know if Whisper knows that their family has died. I don't think Whisper believes that, and whether or not that's true is something to be seen. But it was definitely under mysterious circumstances. Whisper was found in the ruins, and no one else was. So.
Okay. I had some suspicions. Well, we can come back to this. Where does Whisper go when they want to be alone?
Whisper likes to. There's a strange spot in the village, by an old well, and if you stand there, for some reason, no one will be able to see you or interact with you. Like you sort of disappear, and Whisper suspects that it's a door of some kind that hasn't been opened yet. So Whisper tends to stand in the middle of the entire bustling village, but no one sees them. So,
God, you're all so good. I'm just like, all the options. This is delightful. And yeah, Whisper, who do you go to with your problems?
Right. So the last orphan, the one that was taken care of by the village. But they're already much older. Like they're they're like ancient, right? They're super old. They're like 40
35.
Yeah, like, exactly. They're like absolutely ancient. But yeah, so their name is, let's see, I know I picked out a name already. Kendria. So Kendria is a weapons maker.
Yep. So the smith.
Yeah. And Kendria is like very large, very very strong, very happy, very not someone that people would think Whisper would like to hang out with, but they get along really good.
Can I get pronouns for Kendria?
Yeah, Kendria goes by she, her.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Fantastic. Wonderful. And then I just have one more question to all of you collectively. What do you all do for fun around here? Like when you're all together? What does hanging out look like?
I think there's lots of various like tag type games that are like run around and find. It's like hide and seek, tag, maybe even capture the flag if there's enough people. And they're all kind of variations on the same thing, where it's like whoever has the spigot is the one everyone chases. Whoever has the spigot is the one who chases everyone else. Everyone's trying to find the spigot. It's like one toy that we have like 15 games wrapped around, and they're all kind of variations on the same thing, but it's a lot of physical, like running around and chasing and hiding and kind of thing. Does that sound cool? And I'm happy to do more as well. But
I think running games, hiding games, and also sneaking and hiding games. I think that there's a game that we play. Let's call it, what birds are in the, let's call it Owl Eyes, which is a game that I actually, this is one of my these are two of my favorite games in real life. Owl Eyes is when one of the kids is the owl and they're looking for mice to eat, and all of the other kids have to hide while the owl counts down. That's them flying around. And then when they open their eyes, wherever you are, they can call you out. But they have to describe where you are, and they can't just be like, Whisper, I see you, because what if they're looking over there, but Whisper's over here? And instead they have to be like, I see a mouse by the crook of the old lightning struck oak tree, wearing their turmeric flax today. And like, if it's not them, it's not them. Until either all the mice are caught, or until they get like one more shot, and then like they can count down again, and then you have to hide in a new spot. So I think that's a really fun game because hiding well is fun. And then I think there's also like how quiet can you be game, where there's someone in the center of like a big circle, or maybe your people are even hiding and the person guarding the treasure is like blindfolded, and then you have to sneak out unheard. Wow. But if you can hear them, the treasure keeper can like be like, no, I hear you, and like they point silently. And if you get pointed at, it's like it's an honor system, like you just go back until either the treasure's taken or no one, it's clear that no one can get it. Because I think a lot of these games kind of fizzle out organically into just other games, or like then it's time to go home. Yeah.
Oh, it's getting dark. Like, time to head back. Yeah, fantastic.
For me, one of the important elements of those games is they often involve lots of times where 2 or 3 people end up hiding in a bush together and having to be really quiet, and then of course like talking and giggling and being stupid and being dumb and like giving themselves away. There's lots of opportunities to be like crouched up in a tiny little thing like under a shrub, be like, this is my spot. No, it's my spot. Yeah, I got here first. And
and then you start talking about like, stuff going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
I think there's also, I can't believe I didn't think of this, I think there's games of marksmanship, like archery, and probably like once you have learned to craft your first knife, you make a bunch of really crappy little knives, and then you try to throw them, right? I think there's like a lot of like throw the rock at the thing kind of games, like a cairn toppling, right? Like you build a bunch of cairns and you try to knock them over.
The thing.
So like,
great.
The goal is like either my cairn is so strong you can't knock it over, but you can only use certain size stones, or it's like my aim is so good I'm just gonna get you. And like there's lots of those games too.
Lots of room to call things for cheating. You step too close. You use too big of a rock. You pried your cairn in front of a tree.
Yeah.
The wind was blowing. It's not fair. Let's redo it.
I think that's
He's too strong.
Wonderful moments where Tang actually betrays her still like quite childish nature, where she gets caught up in those arguments instead of like helping to mediate or arbitrate them. And maybe that's when Jess has to step in and be like, what if we play a different game?
All right. I love all these characters. I love this already. It occurs to me that of the area around the village, the best place to play hiding type games would of course be in the old ruins. Like, is that a thing the kids do, or are they kind of like, they're a bit like wary of those ruins?
What do you think, Jamie? I think that's your
I'd say if you play in the ruins, it's proof that you're almost an adult. So only the children don't play in the ruins, but we are obviously almost adults. So we play in the ruins, right?
Yes, that's the auspicious thing about 13. That's the age you become a grown-up.
Yeah.
100%.
I think there are dares. Is it okay if I add like a dare?
Yes.
I think incredible. Because in our world building, we mentioned that there are these spooky stories that kids tell each other about the Ash people, and it definitely has the feeling of the story the older kids tell to freak out the younger kids, but there is an element of seeming truth to it, because the adults shush us when we tell those stories. Like, they do not like that we tell stories about the Ash people, and even though we don't know exactly what they are. And so in the like creepy times of the year, basically, Whisper, you probably have a beat on exactly what times of year those are. The dare is to play Owl Eyes or Treasure Keeper in the ruins at night, and to go all night until daybreak playing those games without getting taken by the Ash people. Like, that's the dare. And I think like at some point everyone has chickened out and gone home.
Gian,
uh-huh.
can I offer a detail? I think there is a rumor of a version of the game where no one gets chosen to be the owl. You like there's a little ritual you use to invite the Ash people to be the owl.
Oh,
but like everyone claims that they've done it, but like I genuinely don't think any of these poor kids are brave enough.
And I think it's kind of like the those old Celtic folk tales about like invisibility spells and like the horrible thing you have to do to get them. I think there's like this thing of if you actually make it all through the night, you will be granted a boon. Like you'll get some kind of power. Like maybe you can turn invisible, right?
It's just like spending the night on Cata Idris. Yeah.
Yeah. But no one's actually done it, and obviously no one can turn invisible except Whisper, kind of.
Interesting.
Weird. So yeah.
We'll come back to this.
I feel like this is all like very revealing of the kind of child.
Yeah, the best thing.
So there's that.
The best thing about playing games about young characters with your friends is that you get to learn all about their childhood misadventures. So I now have some more specific questions for each of you about kind of playbook stuff. Would anyone like to volunteer to be interrogated first?
Sure.
Jamie, you're a blessing and a gift in my life.
I will always volunteer.
How old was Whisper when the Conjurer's Key first appeared at their window, under their pillow, mysteriously wherever it was that they were sleeping? What age were you?
Yeah, I was 8 years old.
All right. How did you feel about that?
I knew it was going to happen because my older sibling was a door, right? And they could see, and they had the key last time. But the key left them. And so, but we knew that it would show up somewhere in the family. Like sometimes it happens. But
so
yeah,
you come from like
Mm-hmm.
a lineage of conjurers, which, we can...
Right.
We'll dig into that.
Right. And I want to stress it's not by blood, right? Because like I think like Whisper's family is like made up of different people who like get adopted in and out, right? So it's not a lineage of blood, but it's a lineage of family, right? Of care.
That makes sense. I've got some door questions now. Which door calls to you? Just like resonates in your soul.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to say it's a door of mist, right? Okay. I just have to put myself there.
Yeah. Which door is silent? Which door does not invite you in any way, shape, or form? It just like feels very aloof from you.
The door of horn.
Mm-hmm. The door of horn. Wonderful. And then,
I think it's because I think it's because Whisper doesn't. There's something that Whisper doesn't want to remember, and the door says, "If I help you remember."
Right. Yeah.
Then you'll regret it. Right. So it's a.
The door is protecting him from remembering? Question mark. Cool. And so then, like, I assume Whisper has like, you have the key, you've had it for 4 years. I assume you've done some messing around with it and learned how to use it at least a little bit. Which door are you most comfortable opening? Which is the one that feels like a safe one for you?
Yeah, I'm going to say the Door of Willow, right? I think with it, I've been able to see the dreams of the village. Like, that's how I know that everyone dreams one big dream, even if we don't know it. Like, every time we go to sleep, we go to the same one that everyone shares.
One big dream. Sorry, I just if this was a musical, I think
No, exactly.
that's when we break in.
Yeah, we do a
Right.
group. We do a group I want song actually. And then Jamie, obvious follow up question: which door is Whisper like deathly afraid of opening?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe because you tried it once and it didn't go well. Maybe just because you are like, I'm not doing that. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's a Door of Stone.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
I think because the last time Whisper used it,
Mm.
Whisper used it to bind someone that they were mad at in the village, and that person has not left their home, like in years, and so Whisper carries a lot of guilt about that. I don't think it was actually Whisper's fault, but Whisper believes it's his fault.
Yeah, that makes sense. Speaking and then lastly, speaking of the doors and the door of mist, have you ever stepped into death before, or is that a thing that you kind of know you can do but have never done?
Yeah, I think Whisper has, but Whisper's confused, right? Because every time Whisper steps through the door, they just show up in their old home and they don't know what that means. And so they just go back.
So much to unpack there. And then one last question for you, Jamie, just because I think some details on this otherwise fairly ambiguous item would be helpful. You have a family heirloom that comes with expectations attached to it. What is the heirloom, and what are the expectations?
Yeah,
Or what does Whisper believe they are, anyway?
right. Actually, I would love help from other people, like what a family heirloom could look like. Like, I was trying to like think about what would make sense in the setting, so I'm very open to suggestions.
First off, I'm wondering: are you thinking of that? Is this as something from your biological family that you carried with you, or is this something that was given to you by somebody in the village? That like,
Oh, yeah, maybe it's an heirloom that the orphans are supposed to have, right?
Oh,
yeah,
I
that's,
like
I was
that.
Yeah.
thinking so, because then the village has a lot of connection to it. Um,
Right.
I, there is a playbook called the Bell. So please, Luke, tell me if I'm overstepping. But I have an idea that you might have a bell that, if rung, anybody is compelled to answer the door for you. And this is sort of the thing passed down to an orphan. But of course, the danger is you can never misplace this bell or let any dangerous people get it, because that would mean that any dangerous person could get into anyone else's home, because when the bell rings, you have to open the door for them. And it doesn't have to be a bell. It could be some other kind of noise
I love
making.
that Jamie is just playing a cat. This is great.
I am a cat. Oh my gosh, I wear the bell around my neck just to
Right, okay. So,
But
what is
I feel like,
a bell on a necklace?
is that okay with you, Jamie? I don't want to prescribe.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. Yeah, and I think for a long time Whisper didn't want to carry the bell, and Kendria really like insisted, and the only reason Whisper said yes is because Kendria built this beautiful necklace to hold the bell.
Yeah.
And Whisper was like, "Well, you put so much love into this. Like, I really can't say no." So
All right. And then, as far as the expectation goes, Jamie, are you happy with just kind of setting it like the expectation is that you will be responsible with the magic favor summoning bell?
yeah, I think the expectation is that also, but there's also an expectation of I have to do my best to make sure there will not be another orphan. Like, that's the
Oh,
responsibility of
yeah.
every orphan, to try to protect the village as much as possible. And I
Yeah.
think that's why Kendria is so kind to me, because she feels like she failed me, right? Even though that's not true.
Yeah.
It's an
orphan's-
unrealistic expectation. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially for a 12-year-old.
Every
Jansen's
orphan's
just out here-
responsibility is to be the last one carrying the bell.
Oh
Exactly.
my god!
Yeah.
Both of you just out here casually breaking hearts narratively right now. Whatever.
Sean and I are like a dangerous duo in that sense.
God, this just makes me want to game with you even more. I love how much we're setting up so early. This is great.
A pair of emotional hooligans.
For sure. You should see us when we start flirting. It's really bad.
Oh yeah.
So that's but we're so we're safe. It's only just gonna be angst today.
Future apocalypse keys. Future apocalypse keys. Like quit campaign. The four of us. Like I'm there.
Excellent.
Let me just write my expansion playbook first. Gion, it's your turn to emotionally devastate people.
I'm
give
sure
you
that won't
this-
happen.
I give you this gift. Who taught you how to hunt and move in the wild? If anyone.
This is where I'm gonna get on my Gion soapbox a little bit and say it's no one person, right? Like it takes a village for a reason, and I think I have learned, in particular, hunting is not a single skill, but an amalgamation of so many different skills. You need to know tracking, animal behavior, plant identification. You need to know weather patterns and how to identify them. You need to know not just individual animal behaviors, but species behaviors, like migratory patterns. Like how will they respond to knowing that a certain place is where one of their number has been killed by a person, right? Because the way that animals respond to animal predation is different than how they respond to human predation. And I do think that our village, I'm just going to be very explicit about this, is not the typical like colonialist, like we go into the woods and we raise everything to grow crops. Like I think there's a lot of mutual benefit in integration. And in order to do that, you have to learn from everybody. And those people have to really have been raised generationally learning this ecosystem as well, right? Like it is truly, we are all in single members of an ecosystem in mutual exchange. Now, all of that being said, I do think that there is someone that Tang really looks up to, that they have told, like she's told herself, I think that this person is the best hunter in the village. And that's maybe not true. And Luke, as the chronicler, I invite you, I wonder if it's, so here are two directions, right? It could either be someone that Tang is like, they're the best hunter in the village and I want to be better than them, or they're the best hunter in the village and I'm like kind of into them. Like maybe this is Tang's first crush. Like I don't know, but I'm
into this.
Yeah, I'm seeing whoever this person is not being that much older, so it is actually probably impossible that they are in fact the best hunter in the village, just because that is a skill that gets better as you gain experience, right?
Yeah, it's both of those feelings interchangeably and in a way that can't easily be distinguished between, do I want to be better than them or do I want to smooch them, or both?
Yeah. I think there's also the possibility that somebody, when they hit some sort of coming of age moment, goes off and does a particular hunt or comes back with a particular impressive catch. And that is the biggest deal that's happened for a while. So while they may not be the best hunter in the village, they're the only one that has taken down this elk or something, a moose, or something.
A king stag. Like they took down the king stag.
They've got a great story.
And that hasn't happened in a long time. So while there are probably better hunters alive, in Tang's lifetime, that probably hasn't happened. Or maybe it did like 10 or 15 years ago, but it's been so long. Yeah. So I think that gives you rights, bragging rights.
Absolutely. Just I'm following the chat on my phone so that my keyboard doesn't make my whole camera shake when I use it. And there's two people chanting crush, 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 crush. And then Joe Sandow, shout out, says there's being the best hunter and then there's being the hunter who looks best doing it.
Oh yeah. Important distinction.
Yes.
The coolest hunter.
I don't think Tang really knows the difference in terms of I think that like Tang she really does want to truly be like the best hunter, but whoever this person is, they just look really good in all their gear. Oh, that's so silly. I love it.
To
so
me, these are the same thing.
yeah.
Fantastic.
When you're 16, looking good is equivalent to being good at what you're doing. Clearly, right?
If people aren't impressed by you being good, what's the point?
What's the point? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, I will come up. I'll sit,
I mean,
sit around.
It's like Marlo Stanfield says, you think you're playing one game, but you're playing the other.
All right, I will sit with that for a bit and figure out what a name. I'll get to it.
I think this person will emerge. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, exactly. We'll figure it out. What of the many interconnected and interdependent skills that make up kind of like the wilderness practice that Tang is engaged with? Which one are like were you and are you like really fucking good at? Like, which is the one that just feels as comfortable as breathing that you rule at? I think you can hear the corollary question on the horizon.
Yeah, I know my gears are turning right now because I think that Tang does bring home game. I think Tang.
Yeah.
This is not me. Like, please let me know if I am like kind of being overly main character about this. I think that Tang is actually a very good hunter. I think she has the makings to be.
You are the cloak. Like, of course you are.
But she's arrogant, right? Like, she knows she's good. And so, like, when she gets skunked, right? Like, when she goes out and doesn't catch any fish, doesn't bring anything home, like, that is such a blow to her. And it's actually when she's processing that frustration and just that, like, why didn't I get it? Why aren't I good? That she enters into the thing that she's just like actually scary good at, which is not being noticed when she's moving through the woods. Like there's not being seen, right? There's like hiding, but then there's not being noticed, and they're not the same thing all the time. Like they overlap, but the Venn diagram is not a circle. And I think that there is almost an instinctive, maybe this is in some ways the kinship, not literal of blood, right? But like of spirit that I share with you, Whisper. Like when I am in my most emotionally heightened state, I also kind of disappear, but it's because I want to be alone. I don't want people to notice me. And that is something I can just instinctively slip into. And it's part of what makes me, the irony here is that's also what makes me really good at hunting. When I can actually channel that and do it on purpose, I'm great. But when I lose it and then I get frustrated and then I use it for bad reasons or like not the reasons that I want. And so like moving through the woods without being noticed, your feet literally fall on the leaf litter differently. Your body is held differently. You choose different routes to go through. And so I think like there is no name for this skill. Like it's not orienteering. It's not tracking exactly. It's just you just slip into like dead space. All the little
going unnoticed.
Yeah,
I think.
This is the term that I would use when I taught my students like how do you move or how do you like sit in one spot without being noticed, because all these games I'm talking about, these are games that I taught and played as part of my outdoor ed work. We talked a lot about dead space. And dead space is when you are like even in your room, actually. This is also very ADHD feeling in some ways. When you're looking through your room, there's just big pockets of any environment you're looking at where your eyes just don't lock on it the same way. And often it's like when you're out in the woods or in a meadow or in a village, like you notice bright colors, you notice like highlights of light, you notice deep shadows. You don't notice the kind of scraggly areas where there's just kind of brush or, like the same path you've walked down over and over and over. This is anachronistic, but like one of the best examples of dead space in our daily lives as people is above your fridge. And not only is that just kind of true, a friend of mine tested this by literally crouching up there and hiding above his fridge. It was 6 hours before his roommate noticed him. Like this just happens. And I think that Tang has this, that is, Joe, why it is so hard to find a cat who's just sitting there. They are masters not being noticed. And I think Tang also has that slightly feline quality of like, but unlike Whisper, like he can't control it, and that's actually the thing that is a bit of a risk. Oh, speaking of cats, hello. Hey.
Oh, is it our Bartleby?
It's Bartleby.
He's a Bartle.
Tales from the Low Cantrefs, guest starring Prince Bartleby.
Oh, that's so cute.
We'll name an NPC after him.
Emmett is actually hanging out
Oh my
back there. He's just
Hello,
not.
Sir Emmett. Oh,
He's just sleeping. He's going to
It's
sleep.
Yeah.
If only I had a pet. I wish I had like a cool raven that could sit on my shoulder. I
Oh
feel
my
like it would be a real
gosh.
vibe.
That would be so awesome.
All right, Gian, compulsory, obligatory follow-up question. Which skill among the many that make up, Wilderness Craft, which one do you really still struggle with? Aside from, it sounds like, patience sometimes.
I have such a hard time with all of the like the patience stuff. So like I can bring in the game and I can dress it, but like butchering well, like I don't understand why you can't just cut it up. However, like I'm just not interested in that part. There are other people who can do that. I'm out there to like hunt and get the game, get the glory. Like that's what I'm interested in. But like weaving the fibers of animals that have like long coats, tanning the hide. I hate hide tanning. That's it. It's hide tanning because hide tanning takes so much finesse and patience. And you have to check it constantly, and like it can go wrong so quickly. And when it goes wrong, it goes real. I think that Tang has smelled smells that like no one else in the village has had to deal with, just from like being so bad at processing.
You've discovered new smells.
And like, yeah, and like this is a thing that is known in the village. Tang is maybe the best hunter of her age, but she's the worst hide tan. I hate hearing that so much. I don't want to be the worst at anything. Like, how dare they? And it frustrates me. But then, like, when people actually offer, like, when the tanner is like, well, do you want to apprentice for a season? And I'm like, no. Why would I do that?
Fuck you! I'm good at everything.
Why can't I just naturally be good at everything? Like, I don't understand. So yeah, I think it's.
And does that? I'm curious. That kind of like allergy to things that require time and precision and patience. Does that also extend to like lighting fires on a bad day where it's just not working?
I think that, yeah, like I think it's the kind of thing where Tang has these skills. They don't have the calm to just like know that they'll get there. Because like when you're trying to light a fire, especially like my gear is flint and steel, and flint and steel is reliable, but it's reliable over time, right?
Yeah.
Like it's reliable if like you have planned things and you have the kind of logistical awareness to be like, I need to start lighting this fire like an hour before I actually want it. Tang's 16.
It's a game of averages, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, flint and steel, incredible durable material, obviously waterproof. You can use all kinds of materials as the tinder to get that spark into a fire. But
and on a long enough timeline, you will get a fire.
Like the process,
question is,
the process for people, because I think this actually does explain why it can be so laborious. In order to get from like taking that spark on a flint and steel to an actual fire that is useful and warming, you have to get it into like this pile of like the tiniest process stuff you can find, either with, I think like in the village we probably use char cloth, which is plant, like 100% organic fiber cloth that's actually been like baked in this little tin, like a metal tin with one hole in it, so it carbonizes and it holds the spark and it actually turns into an ember. But that also has to be in like a pile of tinder, and you have to put it in this giant dry nest, and then like very, very gently, yes, you have to blow. It's called a tinder bundle. This is why Tinder is called Tinder on our phones. Like you have to literally like just firm enough that it actually catches, but not so hard that you blow it out, or that the moisture in your breath keeps it from catching. You have to blow that entire tinder bundle into flame, and it's so dramatic. It's like smoke pluming out and then like boom. And let me tell you, when Tang and also I like get that going, you feel like the coolest motherfucker who has ever walked
I'm a wizard.
entire planet. And then
You're
that's
Prometheus who's just brought fire to the.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But like there are so many variables. And I feel like our village can get moist in the winter and spring. There's rain, there's cold. Even like moisture in your hands can affect the tinder. Like in real life, I live in California, which basically is a tinder box. But like there are still times I've struggled to get a fire. Like there's a lot of things that can affect it. And it is true that the more experience you have, like when you find someone who's really good at land skills and they just get it every time, it's because they've been doing it every day. When they were 16, they were getting just as fucking frustrated as Tang gets when it's like a little drizzly and you just can't get it, you know, it's just not working. And so anything that requires that like just like chilling out to get there, very bad at it. And I will never admit to being bad at it. Ever.
Fair. I love this. I can't wait to put you in these situations. Tang, what is the scariest thing that's ever happened to you outside the village when you were out hunting, stalking, tracking?
Oh God.
It's insert option here.
Yeah.
Did you see a bear? Was there a rockfall?
You know, here's what I have seen. I've had a couple wildlife encounters that were scary. I think like I have run into maybe not the king stag that this yet unnamed crush of mine brought home, but like a large stag it was the rut. It was aggressive and ready to go. Like I run into snakes. Like is this an island that has? I need to know. Do we have snakes on this island?
Yes. This is a Welsh game, not an Irish game. We are allowed to have snakes.
We have snakes. So like I run into an adder that like was just under my foot, and I just barely avoided stepping on it and getting bitten and poisoned. But I think actually the scariest thing that's ever happened to me was I was coming home. I had a brace of let's say I was actually hunting in the meadow and I'd actually caught like a brace of a few like game birds, like grouse and a couple rabbits. And I was like feeling good, but I was really far out. I'd gone alone because I hunt alone and I tend to like being alone a lot. And on the way back, I took a deer trail up the hill because I wanted to look at the sun setting, and I twisted my ankle. And it turned out to not be that bad, but it hurt so much to walk on that I couldn't walk on it, and I actually had to sit and watch the sunset, and it got really cold. No one knew I was out there. I tried calling, but no one responded, and it wasn't a part of the land around the village that anyone goes to. And I realized like it could be days until someone finds me. I could get really, really sick or hurt, and I'm alone. And I think that was the scariest thing to realize, that it just takes one mistake with no one out there with you for everything to just start crumbling around you. And luckily, I think like as it got cold enough that I was anxious, I stood up and it was like just not painful enough to walk back. But like that was a very sobering experience for me.
Yeah.
It stayed with me in a way that I can't really put words to.
It's some powerful stuff. And I have one last question for you, Gian. So like Tang spends a lot of time out in the meadows alone, sometimes at night. What do you do to make yourself feel better about the whole Ash people situation? Is there a ritual? Is there a trick? Is there a little trinket you wear? Like what makes you feel like you don't have to worry about horrible monsters popping up out of the ground like daisies and like doing whatever it is the Ash people do to you? We'll figure that out.
Because I don't know which version of the Ash people I think is real. I think most of us in the village, like the kids, like there's like one version that it's like our pet version, and like that's the one where we insist that that's the real one. And I've never had that certainty, which actually is the scariest thing for me, because generally I feel very certain about things. But I think the way that I reassure myself is that I am not as given to ritual, to finding solace in ritual as a lot of my peers and adults in the village. I think like I'm not quite at teenage atheist levels about it, but like you know what I mean. Like I am like, if not skeptical, a little bit, just not. I think that there were a lot of rituals when my younger sibling died. I should give them a name at some point. I will. And I think that like my parents conducted a lot of rituals for grief. I think that maybe it was a sickness and like they tried to keep doing rituals and like that people helped, that it was it wasn't just my family doing this on our own. There is no being on your own in this village, right? It's one of the beautiful things about Sindel, but it didn't work and they died. And so I think that there is a certain degree to which the Ash people, it's like, if they get me, they get me. Like it's almost like a willful, not nihilism, but just like, you know what? I'm here, and like if I chicken out, I chicken out. But like there is no ritual, there's no talisman, there's nothing that will help me if they come.
I'm aggressively indifferent to you.
I am aggressively indifferent, and I do think that there is also like that quieter voice of like, I'll know them if they're here. Like even if I don't see them, it's the right. It's like I might not see them, but I'll notice them. Right. Like I think like that is actually something that weirdly is reassuring. It's like they're not going to sneak up on me. Like I will know that they're here. So
all right.
Ambivalence.
Powerful ambivalence. That does sound like a very specific kind of adolescence. Yeah.
Let me write that down. Powerful ambivalence.
I'm gonna turn on some lights in my room, but I'll be right back.
Sounds good.
Fantastic. Sean.
Yes.
And now there was one. So let's start with some like really basic logistical questions.
Yeah.
You have some books that you acquired. How did you learn to read? Like the overwhelming majority of people in the low Cantrefs are not literate. It's not a useful skill.
Yep.
How did you learn?
Yeah, I mean, we've already tied to Nana a lot, so like she seems like the practical thing. I think that for the most part, excuse me. I think for the most part we have an oral tradition, and for the most part, most people don't read, but and also I don't think we have any kind of form of accounting except. I think that my Nana did have some sort of books that she kept for when like merchants would come through town, because internally we don't really need any kind of accounting system, or rather, even if we need one, people prefer to settle things, with personal interactions rather than we have one. Counting.
It's called gossiping.
Yeah, it's gossiping, and it's mediated disputes, and it's people like deciding in this moment, I think one cow is worth this, and next week it might change because I really worked hard to get this cow, or really worked hard to get this stag versus last week they were plentiful. But I think that bean counting does matter when you're dealing with people you don't know and who don't understand your sort of trials and tribulations. And so I think that Nana was the one who sort of did the books for the entire village. Yeah. And I think that sort of implies that maybe she lived somewhere else in her life. Like she did not, either she came here as an adult, or she spent some time afar, because I don't think anyone learned to read here. And so she she showed me, because I think that Moss had an interest in how do all those things work. And whereas most of her like 20 some odd grandkids didn't care, Moss was totally her favorite. I mean, people say they don't have favorite kids. That's a super lie. I was absolutely the favorite grandchild, and got some sort of indulgences in that. And one of those indulgences was being taught to read.
Yeah, fantastic. When you were like young, right?
Yeah. Like last year?
No, like when you were like 8.
Okay. So 4 years ago.
Yeah,
that's it's a third of my life ago.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose actually, let me just ask the broader question. We can dig into the specifics. Like, what marked you out as someone who had the potential to learn Grammary? Like how did you learn the language of the great trees? Because
Yeah,
no one is just born knowing that language.
right. Well, let's talk a little bit about what that language is and how people you like use it. My imagining is that it's a language that we only know bits and bobs of, and that most people at least, have a few ritual words they know that came from songs or nursery rhymes or those kind of things, and those are the grammarly words that they know, and they don't necessarily even know what they mean. They just kind of know what they're supposed to do, or like when you're supposed to use them. Like you say this when you're like shutting the chicken coop to make sure that the fox doesn't get them at night. I don't know really what it means. It's just a thing we do, you know.
In my
And
in my head, it's very much like, medieval peasants sitting there in church listening to a mass in Latin that they did not understand, but they knew that when they heard Amen, it would like their job
they
was
could
to say
go.
Amen back because it's a
Yes.
magic word. Like, I think for most people, that's probably how the language of the great trees is.
Yeah, yeah. And where do you think
But
it comes from? Where do you think it's just passed down through oral tradition, or do you think it's something that we were exposed to from other people? Or
I think it really and truly is the language of the great trees. It is
okay,
spoken by the Dallin, who are kind of like all the various non-human and non-beast and non-plant, like all the middle category of mixed up weird children that they had.
yeah,
Elves and fairies and, ravens with wings made of pine needles and all that kind of weird shit.
yeah,
So yeah, like I think humans learned some of it from the Dallin. I think some, blessed people had weird dreams. I think some blessed people sat down under trees and listened to them for a very long time, and all of a sudden, in the creaking of the wood in the wind, they started to hear things.
yep. Well, I'm going to main character this a bit and say that because I really love
Incredible.
that. I love that. I love that this is just a notion of like spotlight, right? I
We are
think
all the protagonist of this
we're
young
all the
Everyone
novel.
is the hero of their own internal story.
although, yeah,
Yes,
at
thank
least
you,
with the-
Jayon.
yeah.
Including you, listeners.
You too. So there was a time when Book jumped off the ledge into the pool and didn't come back. Or not Book, sorry, Moss. I'm just looking at the book.
Ooh.
Moss didn't come back, and they didn't come back for enough time that people went to go jump in. Like the adults were called, and they left. They all left in the
Yeah, right.
pool, and they were like dredging the pool looking for Moss. And what Moss found at the bottom of that pool was one of the Dallin, who spoke to them. And maybe the Dallin was a fish with with fur. Maybe the Dallin was, some algae that was also alive. Or some seaweed that
We'll
was
figure
also
it out.
alive. Right, right. And in speaking, allowed
Yeah.
them to breathe. I don't know, like the words of the Dallin sort of gave them air, and so as long as they kept being next to the Dallin, they were fine. They weren't hurt at all, and they were also sort of enchanted by it. And I think that when they came back, they said, I'm stealing this as a line from as something Judd Carlman shared a long time ago when someone had heard things from the elves. When they came back, they said um, we should everyone should go inside and and buckle up and bolt all down every single hatch and everything else. And uh, like that was sort of received like they only were found like hours later, and they didn't nobody know how they survived, and nobody knew where they came from. And so it wasn't received super well. Most people kind of did it, and that was the night where we had the biggest storm that we've ever had in Moss's life, at least.
Yeah.
And the people who didn't like totally bolt down everything like lost a bunch of things. Like a home was like a roof came off because the thatching wasn't fastened down well enough, and a bunch of things were sort of destroyed by it. And I think since then, Moss has been the one that the Dallin have warned about really really bad things. And so while Tang does the really really important job of feeding everyone, Moss has the job of telling people when unpredictable threats are about to arrive.
if and only if the Dallin feel motivated to warn you.
Yep.
Because, of course, the tragedy is like people. They're all different.
Yep. Well,
and so you learned the tongue from them?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think. So while as Tang is an active participant in actually hunting and bringing home the food, it's not like Moss has any control over it. Just like you said, the Dallin are it's all up to them. It's just that's what people expect of Moss now.
Yeah, fuck me.
So it's just this expectation, right? It's just the expectation that if anything bad's gonna happen. So Moss has many times been blamed for people's misfortunes because Moss didn't warn them in advance. Like when it's like dumb little stuff, like I stubbed my toe. Moss, why didn't you tell me the rock was there?
Why did the Dallin warn you about my
I can tell you right now that is something that Tang absolutely hates. And I bet that, like, while she actually is pretty respectful to elders in the village, like, if like someone a little bit older than you, like not an elder, but like one of the 18 or 19-year-olds, like they're adults, but they've kind of just gone through the rites of adulthood and talks shit about Moss, like I am in their face, like immediately, like you're not going to talk about Jess's little sibling that way. They're just a kid, and you're full of crap, like just instant popping off.
Yeah,
not prudent at all.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That said, if any of the various tragedies that people have had in their life, like Tang losing their younger sibling, or Whisper's orphanage, if any of you want, if you want to lay any of those responsibilities on Moss's shoulders, totally happy with it, secretly or overtly.
Can I actually, because I sorry, like I interrupted your flow.
No, no, it's all good.
I think like that's actually such a great little tie-in. Like I think that some people gossip about my sibling. I'm just going to give them a name, right? I'm going to call them Lark.
Lark?
Yeah, my younger sister, Lark. I think that there is a piece of gossip. It's not quite a rumor per se, but I think like there is kind of that just reflexive now, like, oh, if only Moss had told us about like how bad the sickness was or something. Maybe some other people also got the same illness and they didn't die, but like Lark did. And when I hear people saying that, I'm just immediately like, Lark died because she died. She got sick and died. The way a pig would die, the way one of our chickens dies, like she just got sick and died. It has nothing.
The way you will die if I hear you say this again.
Or like
it just happened.
I think sometimes like when Tank's really pushed, he'll just be like, yeah, the way we're all going to die. And like it's not respectful and it's not kind, and it's just one of those things where it's almost like there's that maybe inappropriate transference of now you're not talking about Moss, now you're talking about me. Like this is my business and my family, and you don't get to talk about my family.
Yeah.
There is a certain, individualist streak to Tang that is like actually really inappropriate in this village. Like it is not.
Yeah.
I love how like bluntly pragmatic this like 16-year-old kid is. It's like, yes, I have all of the ridiculous confidence of like being 16 and invincible, but also we are all going to die someday.
Yeah, and it's never at the right time. It's never like, in the ways.
It's always the wrong one.
Like there are certain times when you need to hear that or whatever, but like that's not Tang.
Yeah, you have two stats.
Yeah. One brain cell, two states of being.
Incredible.
Yeah, and I think that's why Moss now. I think that is why Moss often speaks in like eeps and oops, because Moss is really afraid of their words having way too much weight, and so they'll be like eep, and someone is like, "What's that mean?" And they're like, "I didn't even want to say that." So they have like resorted to like only making exclamations, not only, but most of the time they just sort of make exclamatory noises and don't actually say. Like they're perfectly able to speak. They're not mute or anything like that. But like they just tend to like be very wary of what they say because people will carry way too much gravity in it. And like so it's
That makes sense. Yeah. When you were named Moss.
Yes.
So like, which I think happens when people, like you don't name infants because
they might die.
yeah, because child mortality is still a thing. So like, when you're like 2 or 3.
Yeah, right.
When you were giving your name, which of the great trees was the blessing tree that you were named under?
Oh, I think.
And my real interest here is like, was it one of the ones that you have learned the language of and you are blessed by, or was it
Yeah,
not?
I think so. I feel like um, I think what Moss was named under the hazel,
Yep.
and I think that's why Moss has a token of faith. And I think it's which Moss uses as a walking stick, which may or may not be seen as irreverent, but it's
That may or may not be appropriate, but like we'll figure it out.
a hazel branch. It's a long, sturdy hazel branch. Hazel branches can get
Yeah.
whether or not
Oh,
they
yeah.
can.
Also, like,
And does it?
oh, sorry. I think like we can kind of retcon in a certain like, can we make this thing out of this other thing? Because one thing to remember is that in pre-Western colonial whatever, like everything was tended, right? So like pretty much anything could be cultivated into most things. So like just for our collective future reference as players, like if we're like, I want a willow staff, and then you're like, wait, but with that, it could happen. Like we could totally.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Coppiced woodland is a magical thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's narrow, right? Like it's not a big old massive sturdy one. It could be like used as a switch almost. It probably has some bendiness to it. But for a 12-year-old who's all spindly and all
It does
knees
just
and
fine.
elbows,
Yeah.
it does just fine as a walking stick.
And was it cut from the hazel tree in the like shrine in the middle of the village, or was it cut from like some wild old hazel out in the wilderness around?
Oh, I think I want to tie moss to the village. I think it's cut from the village's hazel. Yeah, I think I think that there's a little, there's what happens if you cut a branch, right, and it kind of the scab, the little bit of that forms over it. That moss can still find that place. Moss still intuitively knows where their hazel stuff is cut from.
All right, Sean, I have a vitally important question for you.
Sure.
Possibly the most important question I've asked today.
Okay.
It's going to really shape the nature of this game.
All right.
What is so auspicious about the age of 13?
I thought you were going to ask, who do you have a crush on? But anyway,
No,
please continue.
We'll play to find out.
I think we should answer this question together. I think this should be a collaborative effort. So one obvious reason. I think that there's both a very pragmatic and like known thing, which I think 13 is like considered the age of adulthood. I think that is the normal thing. Like 13 is a big deal. But I also feel like 13 is I think that there's another element to it. And I think in your 13th year, that's the year when the Dalen can hear you too. Normally, like communicating with them is kind of gibberish, but in particular, like you can't actually communicate back except for ideas, like vague ideas. But I think in that age, the Dalen can understand you. It stops being like listening to mass where you have no idea and you just hear the amen, and it starts being actually decipherable.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And then one final question, Sean. And this is our last question, after which I think we will take a break.
Sounds good. Yeah, Sir Emmett has decided that it's time. It's almost time for a break.
Hell yeah!
Come down, and he's like, "Hello."
And this is perhaps a slightly loaded question, but I'm fine with that.
That's okay.
So you have these books.
Yes.
This kind of these half dozen very precious books. You said you reckon they've got like some sorcery in them.
I think so. Yeah.
Though,
I don't know sorcery at all.
Again, we can dig into the specifics of that. And you said you found them in a grove.
Yeah.
Where was this grove?
Question:
and is it somewhere other than the ruins? Which is my immediate thought.
No, of course it's not. It's not somewhere other than the ruins. Yeah. So, important question. Also, who does Evan have a crush on? And that the answer to that is anyone who has treats. Emma has a crush on everyone who has treats.
Oh, look at that small face.
Or has laps.
The best boy.
Yeah. No, it's totally got to be. So okay. So I'm imagining in this ruins. When I was in Scotland, because there's no trespassing laws, or at least there wasn't in 1997. We just like walk through all kinds of rooms. It was freaking amazing. It was awesome. We camped in like the insides of a castle that only had 2 walls left. It was great. And so I imagine there's lots of buildings, and the ruins, although we have these rich meadows, the earth has never been fertile in the area of the ruins. Like the ruins is just, it's all kind of covered in like this ashy dirt, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, right. So there's not a lot of growth there. It feels like it's kind of always in the shadow of the mountain. Never gets direct sunlight, and nothing grows there except for this one grove of trees. And I think I think that there's this high mound and there's this grove, and I think that I kind of I'm looking at all your great trees.
I know what tree I think it is.
Well, what tree do you think it is? Because
I think it's a grove of yew trees.
I like that a lot.
Yes.
Because the stern yew is like the tree of binding and of imprisonment and of
also
containment.
The fruits are highly poisonous, and
everything. It's all poisonous.
Oh my god! Also, the wood makes some of the best bows. Oh, the yew bows. If you can get yourself a nice, I think I have a yew bow. I think I have it actually in my earlier notes before today. The Tim has a Western European yew bow, because you can make them really short, which is nice for hunting, but still the draw weight on those things is like 60, 70 pounds. So like they're good.
The reason they're so good is because the yew is a killing tree. And so of course it makes good killing tools.
Luke, oh my God. Yes. 100% yes.
The killing tree. Yeah. So
doesn't everyone know that? But yeah, and because of course, we haven't kind of done setting introductory stuff in any kind of, in-depth way. I figure we'll do it next time. For now, we'll just plunge in. But I think a key thing to kind of understand about like the history of the Low Cantrefs and of the world that they inhabit is that like once everything was like a terrible, smoking, burning, charred ruin filled with sorcery, in the days where the elementals walked and they like shaped liquid rock to make the mountains and like carved out the furrows where one day now rivers flow. And then the great trees sprouted. And like from the great trees, all life in the world in the way that we know it kind of came into being. And sorcery was eventually tamed and kind of like quenched. And like now there are little sparks of sorcery left, but it is like there is a great existential threat to the notion of sorcery, because like what if it burns up all the world that now is and everything goes back to that terrible long ago time? And the yew tree, the great yew, is like integral in that process of like how was sorcery tamed? Well, the prison tree is what binds it and keeps it. And of course, Sean took the books of sorcery away from the yew grove.
Yeah, I think it's notable that almost everything Moss has is something that they have taken. They either have been given or taken to the contention of someone else. Like having their grandma's journal. Everyone was upset. She died right after she gave it, and it was like a big family heirloom. It was supposed to be passed down, but she'd already given it to Moss. I think what was it? The ink that I have, I stole from a traveler who was coming through.
Probably a traveler.
Yeah, it was a traveler or a merchant that was coming through, and I stole it. These books were taken from a tree. Like Moss is definitely in that like childhood way of being like, well, no one's using it right now. It's probably okay.
It doesn't have a sign on it. Like,
yeah.
All right. Fantastic.
Yeah, sorry, Gian. I feel like I cut you off. I feel like
No,
you had an idea
I'm
about
really
the
glad
year.
I waited because I feel like if that's the core legend, like that feels like a creation tale.
Yeah.
And if that's the like one of the core creation tales of Sindel, instead of like that game that we play being treasure keeper, I wonder if it's like you have to identify and collect like seeds from these trees. You have to collect a yew berry, which is already like it feels risky because you're carrying this thing that you eat it, right? Like it's like, oh my god, but like you're carrying it, and then also like an acorn from the oak trees,
One of each,
yeah,
except
one of each.
except
And
the
then-
holly, who, for whatever reason in this village, we do not remember.
Of course.
Mhm.
And then your goal is to actually like you are everyone who's hiding to try to grab the treasure. They're not thieves, they're embers. They're trying to burn the seeds so the trees can't grow. And that means that the person playing the seed keeper, like the person guarding them, is actually like guarding the potential for life and symbol. And I wonder if this is actually kind of a kid's version of a ritual, like a larger ritual that is played that incorporates this game in like a very
Yeah.
all
Nice.
village way. I love
That
that lore
shreds.
so much. I love
That shreds.
story.
As soon as you said the ash people, I was just like,
Yeah.
I can work with this.
Nice.
All right, fantastic. So I feel very good, friends, about the tapestry we have woven. I think it is rife with heartbreak and with joy and with space to grow up in and the seeds of future trouble and maybe some stray sparks that might set the whole thing on fire at some point. But like, I'm sure that won't happen. It'll be fine.
No, this is going to be a very quiet, staid game. Slice of life.
Yeah.
Nothing.
It's slice of life. That's what I'm known for, right?
Absolutely.
Slice of life Bob games.
I wanted to play the hide and seek game where we're all just sitting in a little like under a shrub, just talking about our day.
Yeah.
We'll do a reunion LARP one shot in person at Big Bad Con like
most
2024 or something.
Yeah. The most stressful thing that's going to happen after the break is maybe someone will be late to village school and they'll have to put the toast in their mouth.
Damn.
So embarrassing.
So yeah.
But yes,
I'm so excited. Speaking of treasures, I think Bartleby deposited one for me in his special treasure box. So I'm going to go take care of that.
You're going to go play Treasure Keeper. All right. Well, friends,
Yes.
I'm going to put a 5-minute
Let's take a
timer
break.
on.
Yeah.
So let's do that, and we'll be back in 5.
Fantastic.